Feminism has been around for a long time and has been categorized into three waves. The first wave took place in the late 1800s and early 1900s. The primary goal of the wave was women's suffrage and to open up opportunities for women. The first women's rights convention was called Seneca Falls Convention and took place in 1848 over a span of 2 days. The convention was advertised as a convention to discuss social, civil, and religious conditions and rights of women. There were almost 200 women attendees the first day when only women were allowed, and the second day when men and women were allowed, 40 men came, including Frederick Douglass, a famous African-American abolitionist. During the meeting, there were many goals the group wanted to accomplish, one of which was the right to vote. This marked the beginning of the women's suffrage movement in America. On August 18, 1920, the 19th Amendment was ratified and granted women the right to vote.
The second wave began in the 1960s and ran into the 1990s. This wave was very radical. It was in the midst of many other protests such as anti-war groups, civil rights movements, and many other minority groups. The issues in this wave were mostly sexuality and reproductive rights. Much of the movement's energy was focused on passing the Equal Rights Amendment, which would guarantee social equality regardless of sex. The second wave differed from the first in that white middle-class women generally ran the first wave, while the second wave was made up more of women of color, and it even spread to developing nations. The second wave feminists yearned for sisterhood and solidarity, and its main focus was to rid society of sexism for good. Also during this wave, the term ecofeminism was created, showing that women were advocates for the environment as well.
The third wave of feminism began in the mid-1990s and is still going on today. Younger feminists in this wave wore high heels, lipstick, and exposed cleavage, which weren't like the previous waves that frowned upon women looking that way. The younger feminists argued that women could wear a push-up bra and have a brain at the same time. Many of the third wave participants refused to be called feminists because they felt it was limiting and too exclusive. The third wavers tried to broaden the term feminist because young feminists felt misrepresented by the term feminist, older generation, and mainstream media. Today, feminist goals have been the right to their own body, abolishing gender roles and stereotypes, and equal pay. This video is talking about feminism in the United States, but that doesn't mean that feminism wasn't a movement in other countries as well.
One of the main issues of feminism today is the division of domestic labor. 8 out of 10 women say they do more housework than their male partner, and since women are paid less than men, it is often their careers that suffer and are put on hold for children. The fixes to these issues are better paternity leave so fathers can spend time bonding with their newborns, subsidized childcare so mothers can still have a career and not have childcare costs force them to become a stay-at-home mom, and lastly, equal pay for men and women for obvious reasons. The downside to all these fixes is that it will cost companies and businesses a lot of money.
You know, just in terms of the U.S. economy, you know, women nowadays are, in terms of two-parent homes, they're out there just as much as men. You know, sometimes women are now the breadwinners in families. Guys are choosing to stay at home. In traditional opposite-sex marriage, which is great if that's what works for the couple, you know. But then, for a female not to get the same pay it doesn't seem fair. I don't think anybody would think that's fair for the same work. That is, I think. You know, you talk about maternity leave or paid family leave in this country. I think that's something that needs to be fixed. I think women are being penalized for having children. They're having to take 6 months off or whatever it is without pay. That's a penalty just for having kids to perpetuate, you know, the human race. And by the same token, I think it's sexist when we don't offer the same opportunity for men. I mean, it's important for men to be at home with the babies too. We are one of the few developed countries that does not offer paid leave for females especially, but for men too. Like Scandinavian countries, men and women get months off to be with their kid, and that's that's the way it should be. So there's sexism on both sides of the street there. But again, global economy. You talk about women being educated, women being able to own property in some countries. Still can't do that in some countries. And if women were able to own property and farm the land, you're talking about honestly feeding the world becomes a little bit easier. So there's lots of positive benefits from gender equality.
All right. Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
About is the gender wage gap. About 77% of women and 63% of men think that something needs to be done to make the workplace equal for men and women. The White House said that full-time women earn about 77% of what their male counterparts earn. Younger women have been shown to have a smaller wage gap, earning 93% of what men earn. And even though the wage gap is narrowing, there's still work to do in continuing the narrowing of the age gap and ending workplace discrimination based on gender. The fix to this problem is an Equal Pay Act, forcing employers by law to pay men and women the same amount of money for the same positions. Theoretically, closing the wage gap would lead to a significant drop in poverty and would help kickstart the economy. A possible negative to this fix is that they don't know exactly what will happen to the poverty and economy. They are just estimating and projecting. Overall, feminism and feminists have come a long way, but there is still a long way to go until there is no gender discrimination of any kind.